Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success, and what they have learnt along the way. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm very excited today to have Jillian Lama on the podcast, Memoirs of Successful Women. And she's an emotional eating and weight loss coach. Jillian is the creator of the Body You Crave Method and is a certified life and weight loss coach. She teaches high caliber women how to end all of that emotional eating and how to lose weight, the excess weight that they've got, and feel amazing in their bodies without having to cheat. So welcome to the program, Jillian.
Thank you so much, Annie. I'm so excited to be here today.
Fantastic. Tell me a little bit about what does your business look like? What do you do with the Body You Crave method?
Yeah, so I work with clients, specifically women, one-on-one and in small group coaching programs to really help them understand the psychology behind weight loss and food and body image so that they don't just create the body that they crave, but they actually create the life that they're really after. Because so often we're looking for more than just the body. We want to be happy, fulfilled, sexy, confident, right? We have all of these other dreams and desires for our life. And unfortunately, we can let our bodies hold us back, whether it's from going on vacation or posting pictures of ourselves on Facebook or Instagram or, just sharing our life. So it's really a holistic approach to how do we not just lose the weight, but lose it in a way where we can actually live it and enjoy our life and not feel like we're constantly depriving, starving, restricting, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic model because I love food. So I'd rather eat well and eat more and then, exercise and actually just make sure that I have an active lifestyle to be able to keep myself in shape rather than making food the enemy, right? I think a lot of people approach eating and food as, it's, you then instantly feel guilty when it should be it should be a pleasure, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So one of my taglines is end the war with food and body. And so often we're at war with food because food is either good or bad. And if I eat the bad foods, now I'm bad. And then it kind of sends us into this tailspin, like you said, of feeling all the guilt and shame and judgment, rather than learning how to have a very neutral approach to food and calling all food good. All food is neutral. And we can simply level up and we can have better and then best options. So it's really understanding not just how to pick the foods that are going to help nourish and fuel our bodies, but actually why we're reaching for them in the first place. So with things like emotional eating, cravings, urges, it's always going to be, why am I reaching for that food? Like, what emotion am I trying to avoid or distract myself from? Or what emotion am I trying to achieve? Like relaxation, joy, pleasure by having that glass of wine or the extra cookies or whatever it might be.
It's amazing because we often just don't take that moment to stop, do we? To think, why have I responded in this default behavior to that's it. Have a drink, have a snack, have a high sugar food. And there's generally going to be a reason behind that.
Absolutely. Right. And our brain has simply learned that food, wine, social media, Netflix, some of these things just become a reliable, rapid, effective way of getting that sense of relief. And that's often what we end up looking for at the end of the night. We're looking to de-stress, unwind, relax. Maybe we're looking to for joy or comfort, especially in a time of grief or when things seem to be kind of upheaving, like it is in 2020, we can feel very anxious and uncertain about what's going to happen in the future. And, eating a bowl of ice cream or a sleeve of Oreos or, kind of reaching for some of these comfort foods maybe you enjoyed as a kid can feel comforting in the moment. And then again, like, we just have to be so mindful that we're not attaching all the shame and guilt and drama to it on the back end, but that we actually develop a process. And this is what I work with clients specifically around, is having an assessment process where we can get curious, but from a place of compassion and self-love to really understand and dig into, okay, why, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? Why did this happen? Versus just well, I should try harder next time. And today's a new day and I just need to like restrict more. Or, we kind of, we don't give ourselves that area to even assess and look at, okay, what really happened? And often because we just feel like, well, that was just a bad thing. Don't do that again.
Yes.
So, yeah.
What moments generally lead someone to reach out to someone with your type of business? What are your clients? What's their first moment when they reach out to you? What do they want?
So most of the time it's around weight loss, and they find that they can lose weight, but it finds them again. So they might be able to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, but then 3 months later, the weight's back on. And it's kind of this constant cycle of, I can lose the weight, but it like I can't actually keep it off in a way that feels good and sustainable. I always need this break from my diet. And so they just feel like they're spinning their wheels constantly on and off, up and down, never fully being able to live in that maintenance mode. And that's one of the biggest transitions, is going from the restriction into now the lifestyle piece, because most people don't teach the lifestyle. They don't teach the maintenance. It's more of like, good luck, here you go, here's the parameters, and not much more guidance is given. Whereas my approach is really about, how do we do this sustainably for the long term? So short term, it might feel like it's slower than you would like, than you're used to with some of these diet sprints. But when the weight actually stays off year after year after year, and you're living in peace with food, that's really the beauty of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's always definitely been the goal for me. That's it. It doesn't matter if it takes a little bit longer. It's actually, what can you maintain? The fact that if you can just get to the body shape that you're comfortable with, that's healthy for you, and then maintain that year after year after year. Or if you're aware, if it changes a little bit, then what are you going to immediately respond to or address a small issue rather than a massive issue? Whereas definitely, I'm assuming most people kind of get to a massive situation and then go, oh my gosh, I need to do something urgently. Whereas the urgent responses, as we know, just don't work. People sign up to gym memberships and go 2 or 3 times and then quit because they're trying to do too much too soon, or it's not actually their natural behavior, and it's hard to sort of change habits and so forth. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things, is giving people the freedom to choose exercise that they enjoy, choose foods that they enjoy, to really prioritize the simple things that make a huge impact when it comes to fat loss specifically. So like drinking water, you should be drinking at least 2 liters of water a day, sleeping 7 to 9 hours every single night. That's going to help you burn more fat, and it'll reduce cravings and urges more so than any workout and exercise plan ever could. So it's one of those things that, like, we know we should be doing some of these things. We just, it's more, how do we, recognizing the ways we talk ourselves out of it, thinking like, that's not good enough, or that couldn't possibly help me lose weight. Or, maybe we stay up later in the night because, that's my me time. That's when I actually get to relax and unwind. So I don't want to go to bed just yet. I want to read this book, or I want to watch this show. So it's really understanding and kind of unpacking everything underneath it.
Yeah. And I love that about your model, because it's so holistic and that therefore achievable. I shy away from those models who are just a quick fix, just attention to, okay, lose weight. Because not everybody wants, not everyone wants to have a certain body shape or a certain size. They're actually very comfortable where they are. There's so many more factors sort of underlying that. They're actually wanting to get themselves in balance and what works for them and their lifestyle. And then, not everyone wants a 6-pack or a bikini body. They're actually just going, I just want to feel healthy. I want to feel that I've got energy, right? I want to feel like I'm not carrying a big extra load that burdens me, because I want to have that freshness and that energy and that responsiveness that for the things that I want to do. So yeah, I love
absolutely. That. Yeah. And self-love is always going to be a big component of everything that I work on, because that's often one of the things where we think, well, once I lose the weight, then I can be happy. Then I can love myself. Then I can love my body. And it can flow into business too. Like, once I have the business, the clients, a certain amount of revenue, then I'm successful. Then I'm happy. Then I'm, it's like, it's always over there and somewhere that's not achievable. And I know I've done this both with my body and around business, of it's like, I can't really love myself until I hit these benchmarks. And so self-love was always conditional. And it's flipping exhausting. Like it is,
So
you will run yourself ragged.
Exactly. And that end goal never comes because we keep shifting because we have, it's like,
Yes.
That's right. I'll celebrate then, but then suddenly you're there and then the next one, oh, but it's going to be better. The next one and the next one, and the next one. And so you can go years. I mean, I know I've coached women who just haven't actually stopped to celebrate who they are and what they've achieved, sometimes for a couple of decades, like it's kind of like you're always waiting. Whereas there's so much that you actually go, yeah, that's right. Focus on yourself first. And then all those other benefits will happen.
Yes.
So what are the biggest challenges that those women in your program have, those that who don't have the easy wins, if you like, who really struggle?
Yeah. So it's going to be mindset, hands down. It's going to be the way that we think about food. We think about our bodies. We think about the process of weight loss and our expectations. A lot of times the big challenge is when reality is over here, but our expectations are over here. And now there's this gap of frustration. And it's, the wider the gap, the bigger the frustration is that we tend to feel. And so really understanding and uncovering the thoughts, because thought work is just not something that's really discussed much in our culture, but definitely not within the weight loss space, right? It's like an eat this, not that. Just avoid these bad foods, just have more willpower. It's a very tactical, action-oriented approach. And we don't actually look at the thoughts and the feelings that drive you to take the action or to avoid it. And so really starting to uncover our true thoughts about ourselves, about who we are, about our role as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, in these different, maybe it's as an employee, as a manager, in these different roles that we have, and how that can all impact our desire to reach for food or wine or, anything. And so that's the biggest, I'd say that's the number one thing I work with clients on is their mindset. It's what they're thinking, what they think about food, and diet rules. We have such a big diet culture around, every different diet's going to tell you, well, these foods are good and these foods are bad.
Exactly.
And instead of looking at all foods are good and how do I learn how to create a healthy relationship with it to where I can moderate, because you can't moderate when you're at war with food. When certain foods are bad, you're never going to be able to have a healthy relationship where you can just have a little bit. Restriction often, always leads to binging at the end. So it's really, how do we start to, allow these quote forbidden foods and see that, oh, my overeating or my binging, it actually does decrease when I give myself permission to eat them and when I change my thoughts about me eating them. So that's the number one thing that I work with clients around, hands down.
Love that. Because I'm one of those people who believes, nothing's forbidden, nothing's bad. Everything is, it's just in a moderation, and it's finding the goodness and the balance for you, and there'll be different levels for different people depending on, their outputs or their desires or so many different factors. Have you always been interested in health, fitness, diet? What has been your journey to date, Jillian?
Yeah. So I've got quite an interesting journey. I started off running a cake and cupcake shop, and that was my first business back in 2010. I started a bakery in Bangladesh. And so it was such a unique opportunity. My mom works for the Foreign Service with the US government. And so my parents happened to be stationed there. So I went over originally after college to work at the embassy. Got in the country, hiring freeze. I was left with no job. So I had no job in the States, nothing to return home to, felt like complete crap about myself just because I thought, well, it's been 2 years since you graduated college. Like, why do you not have a career yet? Why do you not have this good paying job and health benefits and, all these things? And so as I went through that summer in 2010, I just found myself baking out of just needing something to do with my life, needing something to do with my day. And so one day my dad was in the kitchen and he was like, you ought to get somebody to pay you for this. And that's when the light bulb went off, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, I should get people to pay me for this. Like, that's brilliant. And it's like one of those simple things that it's like, how did you not see this?
Yeah.
But it just was such an epiphany moment where it's like, oh, maybe I could actually do something. Maybe I could start a bakery, even though like that thought had never crossed my mind. Like being an entrepreneur, not on my radar whatsoever. And after I got that first kind of taste of it between 2010 and 2012, I was hooked. And after that, it was like I could go work for other people, but that was never my passion. That was never what I strove for anymore. It was really like, okay, what's my purpose? I know I'm meant to be an entrepreneur. I know I'm meant to help people. It was all about finding out how could I do that? And so often I had people who, they would come and get their cakes or their cupcakes or, things for their events. And they would often have two remarks. One was, wow, you're really young. Because at the time I was 24, 25, and I looked a lot younger than I am as well. But the other one was, how are you not 300 pounds? Like, how are you not, severely overweight being consumed with cakes and cookies and frosting and all these things all the time?
That's a very good question.
Right. And very valid. Right. So I realized that there were a couple of things at play. One, I didn't have to overeat or overindulge on the cakes and cupcakes and cookies because they were always there. I always had leftovers. I always had extra. I was always baking. Like I didn't have to worry about overindulging on Monday because I knew I would have stuff Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the week after, the month after. I knew that it was constantly going to be there. So the need to overeat and overconsume actually decreased because it was constantly around me. It didn't tempt me like it might have if it was just, a single cake that was in the house for a week.
Yes. It's not suddenly, it's not a special treat. It's not like you just walk in, I have to have it now because it looks so great and it won't be there later.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I could really start to be mindful and the moderation aspect. I also was very health conscious. And quite honestly, at that point, I was very carb phobic and sugar phobic. And so there was a lot of fear around food as well. So fear around carbs, around sugar. And so that was a big enough deterrent for me at the time too, to where I could moderate very easily because it was so bad, because I was so afraid that if I ate too much, I was going to just blow up like a balloon. And, I would, I couldn't control myself, or it would lead to, instant weight gain or, these other things to where I didn't always have the best relationship with it. And so that's something that definitely came over time. And so as I came back to the United States and I got more into coaching, and it started off with social media marketing and then business coaching and doing more of that. I started to look more for, okay, what's my zone of genius? Not just what am I good at, but where is like, what's my life purpose? Where do I really feel called to change people's lives? And I realized that it was in the health and wellness space, but at the same time, I also knew I had some work to do on myself because I couldn't just authentically say, well, just cut carbs because carbs are bad, or, this is evil.
Sure.
As I started to work and coach with women, I also started to see more blatantly the challenges and the blocks and the obstacles that I personally had. And so I started going through my own kind of awakening and journey for my own emotional eating, overeating, and really looking at how do I make this, how do I change my relationship to food? Because I really felt like I was at war with food. I was at war with my body. Exercise was a punishment. It wasn't done for fun. And I would always claim, I just love to run. I just love to go to the gym. And while most of the time that was true, it still was punishment. And so it was like, well, you're not thin enough yet, so you've got to go work out, or you overate last night, so you've got to go work out, or, whatever the, the kind of the excuse was within that. Yeah. But it really brought to light, the more that I worked with clients, how I needed to fix and really work on my own relationship with food. And so it was kind of this twofold process of working with clients and also doing my own self-discovery and realizing how impactful it was for my clients and for other women who were really struggling with just trying to stick to a diet or just trying to have more willpower, and why those things just don't always work.
Mm. And I think that's so important that you've gone through that journey too, because some people just kind of go, oh, it's really easy. It's really natural. You just don't, it's a simple model, and it's not, it's a very complex model, as we know. And so I think that is really important that you've had to, address all of those issues in your way for you and be able to tap into what other women, will be struggling with. What do you say to those women who say, I'm actually really comfortable being the size that I am, and you as a health coach think, but that's unhealthy. How do you respond to that?
That's a great question. So I am not here to tell anyone that they should or should not lose weight. I believe that you can love your body and be in the process of losing weight together at the same time if you want that, but that's not essential. What I am really looking for though is that we get really honest and real with ourselves about, am I saying that I love myself and just trying to make it easier to be in my body? Am I just, am I lying to myself? Am I really being honest about my health and where it's at? If a client is overweight and she's looking to get pregnant, it will likely help her to lose weight in order to get some of these other goals. So it doesn't always have to be, I want to look, sexy in a bikini or, something like that. Yeah. But we also want to look at, what's the reality of the situation? How is your cholesterol? How is your heart doing? How are your joints doing? How's your back? And really just being honest with ourselves. And you know what? If you are a certain weight and you love that and you love your shape and you love your size, hey, go for it. I'm not here to tell you you're doing life wrong. That's not my goal whatsoever. It's just to give women who do want to change a healthy, loving way to do that.
Yeah, I love that. So you've had a really interesting, let's unpack a little bit more about your journey. So you've gone through college in the States, you've suddenly ended up in Bangladesh. You by default suddenly find that you do have a passion for baking, and then you made that your first business. What were the feelings there? Because I know a lot of people go through that you've done your university or your college and you're supposed to get a real job, you're supposed to get a certain salary and get an experience and sort of be in the real world before, becoming an entrepreneur is not sort of the natural way of starting. What sort of emotional factors happened for you there? How did you feel? What did your parents think? Was it a good thing? Did you see that the bakery was just temporary? What was happening in your mind at that time?
Yeah, so it was a little nerve-wracking, I would say. On one hand, I felt like I knew I was supposed to be in Bangladesh, and I didn't quite understand why, but I knew that's where I was supposed to be. And so I ended up actually meeting my husband there at the embassy. And so there are so many different ways that I can see how, okay, it's all making sense, looking back. Yeah. But in the moment, it was a little scary. The thought of starting a bakery was it was a little nerve-wracking. I borrowed $200 from my parents for the original supplies in order to buy flour, sugar, eggs, just the basics to get a couple of cakes and recipes out there. And it really, it turned out to be so much fun. It could be a little stressful at times because when you're baking for fun and pleasure and there's no time limit to it, it can be, very enjoyable. When you're trying to replicate somebody's baby shoes for a cake, or you're trying to make high-heeled cupcakes, or, when you're trying to meet client needs and on a certain timeline, it could be a little more stressful. But I loved that I had the flexibility to make money on my own terms, doing something that was quite fun and that I enjoyed and I was good at and people loved. And so there definitely were still a lot of ups and downs. For that first year when I was there before I met my husband, I still asked myself, why, God, why? Why here in Bangladesh? Why do you, really? There was still this question. And while it was filling this void to have the business, I also still felt but what am I doing with my life? And I don't have a lot of friends and there's not a lot of social interaction. And, you kind of make the best of what you've got and you learn to have fun with the people you're around. But it still was nothing like being in your mid-20s in the US or the UK or Australia. It was just still completely different. And so there was still some wrestling with, okay, well, what am I doing here? What is it that I want to be doing with my life? What's my purpose? How am I going to pay off my loans? I still had student loans that I was going to be working to pay off. And while I was making money with the business, I also wasn't making a whole lot of extra money to be going towards, these loans and extra things.
But
and so it's definitely a mix.
Yeah, and definitely stepping stones. And that's what I notice, and I encourage other women to be aware of that. When you look at people who are in their business, in their role, and it looks all, it's all together and it's very profitable, there's often these journeys too are just absolutely fascinating. And so that's a classic example. You've tapped into there the reality that when you go from a passion into the business is a different thing, So some people are actually fantastic, they should be pursuing their passion, but their passion is for them. And then you see the ones who try and make the passion the business, then it is super exciting and you're in your space, but you've also then got those other pressures of client expectations, client needs, and time constraints and budget constraints. And so all of that learning you had in that time and the wrestling that you did actually totally helped you in that next stepping stone to then when you came back to the US, it was, I imagine it's just that moment of, okay, do I get a real job now? Or, oh my gosh, I don't want to give up being an entrepreneur because I love so many parts of it, So
absolutely. And that's one thing too that I found in DACA. You had to be resourceful. You had to work with what you've got. Like Amazon delivered within 2 weeks, but it's like, unless you could go down to the local grocery store or the local market, you really had to work with what you had. And so it did really force me to get creative, to think outside the box. I started doing, watching YouTube for like cake decorating lessons, or, here's how to pipe icing differently, or, some kind of new design, or, I found like go-to recipes, but it was more of like, okay, how do I work within these constraints and within this budget and within my timeline? And that is something that I've gone back to time and time again of like, okay, you figured this out in DACA, in a third world country, you made these beautiful Barbie cakes and temples and castles, and like you figured it out. You can do this. Like you can figure out how to make this webinar work. You can figure out how to use, a new software. It's like, it's just like building that foundation and then building upon it. And you're right. Like these stepping stones, it gives you the little breadcrumbs that you need in order to have that self-confidence as well.
Yeah. Oh, and I love it when you don't have those resources or you don't have that training behind you, how creative you can be, and to realize that, everything in this modern world is available. You can go to YouTube, you can watch things. So those people who are thinking, but you have to have these high level qualifications before you start, or you have to be a master chef before you then open your bakery, or you've got to have trained as a baker or done all these things beforehand, or, in a different business paralleling that thinking, is actually not true. It's more of the Richard Branson method of sort of say yes and then work out how.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's exactly what it's like, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, I can do that. I'd love to do that. And then you can, work it out and make it the best quality. Obviously, you don't want to then deliver poor substandard product, but it's amazing because it does actually make you really creative. It makes you learn new skills. It pushes you constantly that little bit out of your comfort zone. And then, you end up so much more skilled and talented with a creative flair than if you're given some kind of box of, or learnt of, this is the way it works, because therefore your mindset is very fixed into, okay, well, I better do it that way. So I love that your journey has actually done that for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you came back to the US, and then your degree was, what was your degree in?
So international relations and Russian.
International. Okay. And Russian.
Yep.
So you haven't applied that directly.
Right.
into
nope.
your career at all. So you then decided, okay, after your time in baking, that you actually do love, social marketing, people, and then it's geared you into the wellness space, which is totally you, right? It's interesting because you would have always known growing up, tapping into, you've always loved that aspect of health and fitness and lifestyle. It hasn't been sudden, okay, I'll just pick an industry.
Yeah. So, and actually when I first, after I had come back and worked, so I worked as a nanny, a personal assistant. I moved, my husband and I, we ended up getting married, moved to different state. And then I thought I would do a healthy food business actually. So that was my first kind of idea was, I really love doing the cakes and cupcakes and desserts and things like that. But I also have this passion of wanting to help people to make it easier to eat healthy. And I wanted to show them that, healthy, low sugar, low carb, different treats didn't have to taste like cardboard or your fifth grade science fair project.
Yeah.
You could actually have great tasting treats that don't, that aren't going to give you diabetes just by looking at them. So I had originally started off down this road, and that was one path that I quickly realized was going to be a lot more time intensive, more financially intensive in terms of like getting something kickstarted and off the ground. And even just in terms of research and development, trying to develop a healthy, like shelf stable product was kind of challenging. And so as I was playing around with different things, I was getting a lot of feedback. I was started selling and shipping throughout the United States. But after about 6 months, I decided that, this wasn't really working. I had invested probably, $10,000 into the business and was making about 3,000 or 4,000. So I just had to recognize, and this was also by the help of my husband, because he was like, look, babe, I love you, but I think you need to find a real job. I think you need to find something else. Right. Yeah. And at first I felt like, oh, but this means I'm giving up. This means I failed. And that failure it felt like such an immense weight. And so what I realized over the course of a couple of weeks, though, was this was the best option. So he was deploying. It was better for me to find a job, to go, work for somebody else short term, and then figure out what did I want to do with my life, with a business. And so after that, I ended up taking B school with Marie Forleo. And I just from the initial kind of, pre-work that we did, I realized I wanted a laptop business. I wanted something that I could take with me and I could travel all around the world and still be able to work and still be able to see people. I didn't want to be tied to the kitchen or tied to a certain location. And so it really helped me to open my eyes. And then the challenge was, okay, now what am I good at? And I think that's where we can often struggle, is understanding and really seeing our strengths and talents, because so often when they come so naturally, it's hard for us to pay them much attention, or it's hard for us to think, oh, people will pay us for this, like it's so much fun. So that's part of the evolution as to what got me into more online marketing, social media, and really starting to move that direction into. And as I got into the coaching world, then it was like, oh my gosh, my eyes were open. So again, it was like just these little stepping stones. And, clarity comes from taking action. That's one of my big beliefs, is that the more we start to step, then the clearer our path becomes. And it might seem like looking back, you're like, oh, well, that was a waste of time. But the reality is you never would have gotten where you are right now if you didn't first start, taking steps and realizing what direction you want to go in.
100%. 100%. So you mentioned before the importance of getting qualified too. So you then went from social marketing into that health and wellness space, and you finally realized, you know what, this is my passion. This is what I'm good at. I love coaching women in this way. And so you also then got certified. Why was that important to you?
Yeah. So I'd say it was twofold. One, I think it was a legitimacy aspect in my own mind. If I wanted to feel authoritative, I wanted to feel like I knew what I was talking about. I wanted other people to see me as an authority or an expert or somebody who could, truly help them. The other part of me, I think, was also just questioning, like, maybe I don't know everything that's out there to know. Maybe there's a missing piece or a missing link, or maybe there's something else that I need to make sure that I incorporate. So it was kind of twofold. But it was a really great way for me to learn coaching techniques, to start to map out what my program was going to be like with my program that the coaching institute that I went through. They gave you kind of like a 90-day kickstart program that you could use with clients. Yeah. And while it wasn't bad by any means, it was something where I knew I don't want to use that. I want to develop my own. Yeah. And so it really helped give me permission to make my own rules, to make my own program, and to look at really what worked for me, what didn't work, and to craft it off of that. And to start working with clients and testing it out and seeing, what were their feedback, their results, things like that.
Yeah. And I notice that it's a really strong quality of people who are, are successful, that they take something and then say, okay, well, how am I going to make it my own? How am I going to not only make it my own, I'm actually going to test it with and continue to refine it based on the feedback that I receive, because I want to make sure that it's a complete fit for those that I serve, that the things out of the box are good, they're certainly a starter, but it's not like, anyone really has a one size fits all model,
Right. Absolutely.
And those that do end up staying in that space, in a very fixed space, and those who don't. And often it is that journey, such as, working in a bakery in Bangladesh, that actually that creative flair, that adaptability, that, agility to be able to respond actually helps you when you suddenly set up, go and do these fantastic courses and then get given a product and then go, well, okay, well, now how do I make it my own? And when you do make it your own, you become that unique, that's right, an influencer in your space, a person who has their own style, has their own method, while underpinned by those qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's finish up then by how do you describe successful women? If you're seeing yourself as a successful businesswoman, what does that actually mean to you? What does it mean? What does it look like or feel like to be successful?
Yeah. So successful, I'd say there's a few things. So number one, self-aware. So really becoming aware of, where you find your value, where you put your worth, what you're really looking for, some of those thoughts, feelings that are driving the action and these goals and the desires, because it's going to shape how you talk to yourself when either you succeed or you fail. And specifically when you fail or when you don't hit a goal. And so I think successful women, they have resiliency, they have grit and determination, they get back up after falling down, and they're not afraid to show their scars. They're not afraid to say, yep, totally blew that one, but they're willing and they've got the compassion and the self-love to start to assess it from a place of curiosity and really understanding, okay, what went well here? What didn't go well? What can I do better next time? Really starting to understand, like, okay, what happened, whether it's assessing a sales call or a launch or a live challenge, or, really having that attitude of nothing here is a reflection of me and my value and my worth, but it's all just a reflection of how I can get better and what needs to change or shift in me or in my business.
Yeah.
And so those, I think, are some really key aspects for successful women, because, we like to talk about failure and how it's inevitable and it's a good thing and fail forward. And it can be really soul crushing to go through it on your own, to like have this big launch or have this big goal and to, completely flop, to not make anything. I think about my first jaunt into, marketing coaching. And I invested probably $20,000 into different courses, programs, ads, software, and I made zero. I signed absolutely zero clients that year. And I felt so much shame and I felt just like a total failure. And it took it took a couple months to actually recover. I went into like a mild depression where I ended up moving states. Husband was coming back from deployment. I was unpacking the house, but it was like, really, like, I didn't want to answer emails. I didn't want to get on social media. It was really an avoidance of people because the shame and the failure that I felt just felt so heavy. And it took a couple of months to get out of that, but really being able to, well, one, to have a coach who could help me work through it, to process it, to start to look at, okay, what was I thinking and feeling throughout this? What were my expectations? What was I making this mean about me? Because that's ultimately what was at play here. It wasn't just I made a mistake or I failed or I didn't hit a goal. It was, I'm now such a big pathetic loser. It's like, I'm never going to do anything with my life. I'm so, life is over as I know it. And it was just this big catastrophic event. And really having somebody that can walk with you through those times is so incredibly important. So being able to reach out for help, Successful women, they can fail hard, and they can learn from it. They can ask for help and get it. They can hire help and, hire assistants or VAs or, people to, for their team to help them improve their time. They aren't too much of a perfectionist to where they think they have to do it all on their own, or only they can do it good enough, things like that. Those have all been, little traps I've fallen into, at one time or another.
Yeah. And I think we all do. Everybody will have times of, that's right. You go from, isn't that amazing that you can go from such confidence of this is totally my passion and this is my business, to suddenly having those days of hiding under the doona going, oh my gosh.
Right.
How did I get into this situation and what was I thinking? And so that's it. It's a resilience. It's a learning to actually go, okay, well, that's right. How do I quality improve? How do I take this moment and learn from it and turn it around? How do I seek out help from a mentor? How do I get some honest feedback? How do I actually stop trying to strive for perfection in certain areas and then going from, good enough in most areas, and actually just backing myself. And I think that self-awareness quality that you were talking about is just absolutely golden. It's so important. Otherwise, you've got to look inwardly and know how you operate to then be able to shine, rather than sort of always be striving to be delivering on what other people expect of you, for sure. And be kind to yourself, right? Be kind to yourself.
Yes. Yep. Learning how to talk nicer to ourselves, about our business, about our bodies, about, our families or our abilities, to show up as a spouse or a parent. Like, those are such important skills to learn. And it's like, well, once you start to master that in one area, it just flows into other areas and it has this ripple effect.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing thing, is like, you work on your life and it manifests and it works into all other areas. You can work into the business, you work on your marriage and it impacts your kids. You work on, the business and growing that, and it changes how you show up with friends or with other colleagues or peers in the industry.
Yeah. So how do people find you, Jillian? What's your website? How do they reach out to you if they're interested in getting some coaching with you?
Yes. So you can find me at bodyyoucrave.com. I also have a free Facebook community called the Body You Crave Community. Trying to make it super simple here. Not a lot of, different names to have to try to remember. Yeah. And then I will also be launching a podcast next spring called Body You Crave. So that'll be out in March of 2021. And on Instagram, I am Jillian.Lama2. Although I don't think there's a Jillian Lama 1, but I am Jillian.Lama2. So
no worry, that's
for whatever reason.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. You've given me so much to think about today, and for our listeners. Yeah, it's so much more complex than we realize. The whole, just going to someone to lose a little bit of weight. I think it'll allow people to be thinking in a whole different way, to be looking at the whole woman, the whole part of who are you and why do you even think you need to, and what's behind that, and what are your true reasons, what you actually want to achieve from that, and how do you want to feel from being a certain size and a certain shape, and for me it always comes down to health. It's I think it's just are you feeling healthy, and are you feeling the best version of yourself because of what you are feeding your body, and how you're exercising and looking after your body. And it does come down to self-love, right? And valuing who you are and what you have to give yourself and to the world. So thank you so much for your time today, and I really look forward to following your future success.
Thank you so much, Annie. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes, and of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.